This is gallons that I sold. Or this
Really?
one. You're asking me on this?
Yeah.
So this,
It was, you know, kind of a nice central location in that fire for a long time.
right, last year,
And,
130.
you know, all the
Go ahead and start. I know.
as long as we have a quorum, which we do, yeah.
They're coming.
so's Christmas.
It's coming rapidly, right?
Yeah, we could start.
Christmas is too.
Yeah.
Believe me.
And you know, just say we're gonna
Fast,
have the meeting.
rapidly approaching.
Yeah.
So you guys ready? He says they're coming.
Yeah, they're walking out behind me. I don't know if they get sidetracked.
Well, I think we can do a roll call. Bill Brainerd,
Here.
Bob Winters,
Here.
Sean
Sinclair.
Sinclair, he's absent.
Rod Billingsley.
Rod Billingsley, present. And I think Councilman Montoya will be here shortly. We've got an agenda, gentlemen. Are you, need an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion carries, agenda is approved. You guys had a copy of the minutes included in your email for this meeting. I guess I'd hear a motion for approval of the minutes or correction if you had corrections.
Motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Yes.
I don't think, can he vote? No.
I can't make the move, no?
No.
Fine.
So it's gotta be you guys?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay, so
Sorry
a
about that.
motion made by Doc Brainerd and second by Bob Winters. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Minutes are approved. We've got a time for public comments, and I guess Since we don't have public, anybody, I assume we don't have any comments?
Really?
John didn't receive any through email or letter.
Okay, you have nothing, John?
No, sir.
Okay. New business. Is Arnold?
I don't see.
Yes, sir.
I guess I was hoping that you would introduce him.
Hi, committee members. This is our new director for the Public Works Division. His name is Arnold Lopez. He will be with us on most of the meetings that we have whenever he's able to. Arnold, do you like to talk with the council? Remember?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
good
sir.
morning.
And
Good morning.
Morning.
I wasn't ignoring you, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Believe me, it's fine. So good morning again, and first of all, I want to start off by thanking you all for your commitment to this committee. I believe it's important to have you guys, as a committee and helping us making decisions, or advising us, should I say, to make decisions on our operation. It's very important to get, people like yourselves that have a long history with, aviation and whatever your expertise that you bring to the table. But, I thank you for that. I know you've been a big support from what I hear throughout the years, and we hope that you continue to support the committee. And, but I'm willing to work with new ideas, moving forward with improvements, whatever we can do to improve our facilities at the airport, whether it be a runway. I know we have a lighting, grant that we've been working with, and, we can update you all on that, which will be proceeding soon, because those monies are already in play, right, Daniel? And
Yes,
And
and we'll
John,
be discussing
so-
that later on in the discussion items.
But I do tell you that you have my word of commitment to making the airport a better place.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Arnold. I guess one of the things that I'd say is, I think over the last, come in, Councilman. Please. We told them you were here, and I think I'm here. Welcome. Daniel, have you got another agenda for the council?
I have one.
Councilman, we're basically, Arnold had spoken to us, and we welcomed him as the new Public Works Director, and I guess I was just saying I appreciate I know that the Public Works Department in the city has had several contracts underway for the street jobs and other things, and it seems like it seems to me that we're moving in the right direction, and I sure hope that we can maintain that with the airport as well, and so we appreciate your presence, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Next item, and really all of this stuff is discussion items. Many of these are left over from last quarter when we failed to have a quorum, so we didn't have a meeting. But I guess, and I know some of these are kind of old, but I'd like to at least work through them and see if we can kind of go from there. I guess the first item is status of the mobile avgas truck.
So we had Victor come down, or his tech come down and work on the truck. We've been trying to get it going. We encountered some unforeseen issues. And so he is supposed to get me a revolt for bid again so that Rebecca can just amend the PO, which would make it easier for us.
Okay.
But basically what happened was there was some residual water in the tank, and it hit the filter and plugged it. So we need filters, and so we were unable, the work's done, we were unable to calibrate it due to the fact that the filter plugged. So he's supposed to get me a quote on I think I had asked for 3 or 4 filters. One to put in and, make sure that we get it cleaned, and then another one to start doing our testing, and then a couple to just have on hand, especially with the amount of rains that we're getting.
Okay.
So I know he had submitted for payment, but I don't believe Rebecca's paid that yet, because we're waiting for the revised quote on that. So, as soon as I get that from him, I will get it over to Rebecca, and we can move forward with that.
But the payment for the work that's been done is kind of is on hold pending?
Well, we don't want to, we want to do it once. It's easier for Rebecca then, because if we make payment now, then we got to go out to bid for the filters and all of that, and that creates a whole different
Okay,
problem. So we're
okay.
getting him to revise his quote to include those filters so that we can amend the PO and do one payment. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does, John.
Okay.
Has that been conveyed to them so they know what's going on?
I had a direct call with Victor,
Okay,
so he should understand that, yeah.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
have you checked with your city manager or with, to see if you're abiding with open bid policies that they have in place? In other words, once you put out something off a bid and they bid on it, can you change it or add on to it?
I have
It
not.
was quotes, it wasn't a bid, right? You
No,
didn't
it
go
was a
out for
price
bid.
quote.
Yeah, it was a quote, I think you said bid.
And basically on this quote here, I think they were the only vendor that actually provided a quote.
We
yeah.
got 3 quotes, 2 no quotes,
Oh,
and then
okay.
the quote,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. all right.
With the airport, they do have a lot of issues of getting vendors to actually give us a quote. There's very few vendors out there that actually work on these trucks and stuff like that.
But we always request at least 3 vendors for,
Okay.
Yeah, that meets procurement code.
Yeah.
The method that we selected to acquire these quotes was through procurement code.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other discussion? Status on the mobile jet fuel truck, John?
I think that was something that was on there last time due to wheel bearing that needed to be done, that the work has been completed. The airlines were fixed and the truck is working fine,
Okay, so it's in service.
yes.
Okay, next item, airport master plan update.
So the airport master plan is in play. Our engineers are currently submitting the grant to FAA because initially it was only going to be state funded, but the FAA said that they would fund it, or partial funding. So we're submitting to the FAA for the rest of that funding to move forward on that. So that's where that's at.
Okay.
And-
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. And how much are we going to be asking for there? Do you know?
It was 92,000.
Yeah, I
if I'm
thought it
not
was a little under
mistaken.
100,000.
Yeah, and it's a 95.5 is basically what the grant is.
Okay.
John, can you inform them of the meeting that we had with the engineer just recently, just so they know the whole process that's ongoing?
Yeah, we had a meeting with our airport engineers to go over the whole part of the airport funding, essentially prepping for our CIP meeting, which is this afternoon. Trying to get the funding for the airport master plan, funding for the lighting project, and some future funding that we're looking to get, which one of them is going to be the extension of a new taxiway for hangar growth. So we are in contact with them, and they're working to get all of those grants in place, as well as, I know one of them, we're doing some advertising coming up for the airport signage and lighting project. we're just delaying that a little bit due to the new fiscal year. We're trying to get that situated so that we can get the advertisement done so we can move forward with that, but.
So, so the master plan, I guess, it's my feeling that that's a really, as you work with the engineers, I'd like for this committee to be involved in reviewing the master plan. For example, I know you mentioned a new taxiway. If the engineer has some conceptual drawings or something, I think I'd sure think the committee would like to see those drawings before we proceed, because this is really how our idea of how the airport will be developed.
So right now, we're working off of the old master plan and what was approved by the city.
Right.
As far as future growth. Obviously, the new master plan is going to amend some of those things.
Right.
I don't think that the city would have a problem with you reviewing them and giving productive feedback on that. So unless anybody else has an objection, I don't see why we can't get that to you. There's no drawings on the taxiway or anything. That was strictly getting discussed to get put into our CIP. Once the master plan starts coming out and we start looking at the actual growth towards that direction, that's really the only thing that's changed, is that for the most part. I mean, there's some other small things, but I think we can get that unless anybody has an objection to them reviewing that master plan and giving feedback.
I think that would be fine, and I know some of the changes that are gonna be required are to meet new federal guidelines, correct, Mr. John?
Yes.
So that's what they're taking into consideration to move us forward and get us to where we're in compliance with all the new federal guidelines that are coming up or down the pipe, no?
Okay.
But we did contract with the engineer who's, expertise, and he's gonna help us, update that master plan. I think the last time it was updated was quite a few years ago, correct?
I believe it was 12.
That's what I was
10 years.
just wondering, what's the time frame of the master plan? It's a plan for how many years? 1 year, 10 years?
I think the master plan,
It's a 5-year.
yeah, I think it's a 5-year.
5-year. That sounds reasonable.
It's generally 5 years, but by the time you get a new one, it's 10, but that's, at least,
Yeah.
in my experience, Doc, but I guess one of the things that I am aware of is, and John's mentioned to me, but we've got one taxiway that's just a little bit too close to a runway, and it's crazy, but they've got the rules such that there's really nothing wrong with the taxiway. It's like 10 foot, 15 foot too close to the runway.
Well,
And-
which one?
It's the one going to 1-4, isn't it, John?
No, 02.
02?
0220. It's the one that runs parallel there, and it's just enough outside of their specifications that they won't fund us to redo it or any kind of maintenance on it, because it doesn't meet their standards. And so it's in need of some repair. It needs to be worked on. So that's part of the master plan, is incorporating that in there so that we can get a deferment on that, so that they can start funding us to get monies.
So
You know,
the whole runway?
No, the
It's a
taxiway.
I mean, taxiway.
Taxiway.
Well, the part from the ramp, it's the part from the ramp to the,
To the VOR, towards the VOR.
toward the VOR.
That long one that runs on
Yeah.
0220.
Yeah.
So that one's the one that we're trying to get, and that's part of why we're doing the master plan. And that'll be part of the CIP as well. We've had it in the CIP since I started, and it's, once in a while, we'll get a program director that says, yeah, we're gonna fund it, we're gonna move it over, and then you know, they get out and we get the new one, and they're like, well, you just don't have enough traffic, which is fine. Like Rod said, I don't think that it's really that big of a safety concern,
Yeah.
but we need to get funding to fix it and maintain it. So this is the only way we could figure out how to do that.
And a comment for information, it's a working document, and at any point, anything new that comes up, that we have to, you know, in our best interest, add it to the master plan, we will address it as per needed basis. You know, we don't want to put something aside and wait 5 years down the road to put it on that plan. If it's something that needs to happen sooner than later, we will, you know, revise it and add it to the master plan at any point, you know, following the required process.
Yes, sir. Well, I got one more question, John. The helipad down there, is that part of what you're thinking about as far as the master plan, the helipad, not on the main ramp, but the one just north of there?
What about,
That is, will be included in the master plan, is work on that helipad or not?
yeah, that's part of the airport, so yeah, that's included
Okay,
on the surface maintenance. That meets all requirements, so yeah, they fund that.
okay.
It is in need of repair.
The ends are, you know, we got some cracking on the ends, but because it's a helipad,
Yeah.
it's really not structurally an issue.
Relevant.
Yeah.
So you're not concerned about, like, fuel trucks going down there, damaging that ramp or apron?
You know, we don't usually have fuel trucks other than ours out there, so no, I'm not concerned about that.
Okay.
And we'll look at it in the maintenance part of it, if something that we can, you know, just perform some maintenance on it, asphalt repair, something on the edge, we can do that with our resources and take care of, let's look at it.
I have a question about policy. It's my understanding that when federal money is used at the airport, it cannot be used for activities that generate revenue for the airport. Is that correct?
That's
So-
my understanding, yes.
Yeah, so it can't be used to build hangars, for example, because hangars generate revenue.
Federal monies, yes.
Yes, federal money, I'm talking federal money only. Then does the, to me, logical extension of that apply? That is, when a hangar is built, and it's built with other than federal money, then federal law does not apply to that hangar. For example, we went through an issue a year ago, I don't know how long ago, about the price we should use to lease hangar space, and that federal law required us to use fair market value for that. My understanding is because the hangar and any future hangar is not built with federal money, then federal law does not apply to that hangar, so we don't have to go through this exercise of figuring out fair market value for leasing hangar space, for example. Is that correct? And the same with the...
I'm gonna say this, it's not on the agenda, so nobody's had any time to prepare that question. I can look into that for you, but yeah.
I'd kind of like you to do that, because I know it sort of became a little bit of an issue when we were trying to set lease payments for hangar space, and I suspect we're going to be updating that sometime.
Well, I'll make a comment to that, is that ultimately the property that's being leased is federal. It was donated to the city through the federal government, so I think that those guidelines will still apply, but I may be mistaken.
Because the dirt underlying the hangar is,
Yes.
was purchased with federal money.
Well, it was donated, but yeah.
Donated, okay,
Yes.
yeah. All right, because I'd like to understand that a little bit, because, and I'd like to understand the extension of that to fuel costs. Do we have to figure out what fair market value of fuel costs are in order to sell fuel at the airport?
No, that's at the sole discretion of the city.
Okay,
as far
good,
as I
then
know.
forget all that then, but,
Okay.
all right, thank you.
Can we move on? Next item, update the water line repair. That's done, I assume, John, is that correct?
Done, closed out, everything's working, been nice.
Okay.
May I ask a question on that?
Yes, sir.
There was an issue about the phone line associated with the water line, is that correct?
Not associated.
Oh, it's not
No.
associated, okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question, sir.
Yes.
So, John, the water line that was, I guess, gonna be installed between the railroad tracks or MDF and the airport, where is that at?
I've not heard anything from,
Tim?
So basically on this, what we need to do is update our master plan before we could actually move forward with the EDD on
That's
that.
that was the other reason.
So once we do the master plan, we could go ahead and present it to Tim Hegerman and see where we could go with that, no?
So a master plan is what's holding,
Yeah.
well, I thought it was already in the master plan from the previous.
I don't know if that water
It
line
was
was
not,
in there.
no.
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Item 6, Steve Alvis's hangar
You
progress.
skipped one. You skipped one.
Update, I'm sorry, update on airport signage and lighting grant offer. You kind of addressed that, John.
Yeah, I touched on that, and my understanding is that we're waiting, we gotta go out and advertise.
Yeah, we have to have a public input meeting, which we're trying to set up. Once we have that public input meeting, we could go ahead and move forward and putting it out for bids. That's all that's holding us right now.
Have you got plans and specifications for this contract?
The engineer hasn't started working on that yet.
I don't know,
He doesn't have.
I would assume that he's got them in place already, if we're that close to being,
Yeah.
going out to bid, so I would assume that he's got the plans, yes.
Have you guys reviewed them, or who reviews the plans and specifications?
We review them if we need to, but for this project, it's pretty cut and dry. It's just remove and replacing. There's really no impact to anything other than that.
And the
And we
engineer,
were involved in designing it, so, yeah.
and the engineer, part of his responsibility is to make sure that it complies and meets all required specifications and standards, particular to the airport and runway. So whenever he goes out for his advertisement, he will include all those details to all the potential bidders, so they will have, everything that's required as far as the lighting and everything.
Okay, I guess, at least particularly with the signage, that's always, I've worked on enough airport projects to know and that oftentimes signage can be confusing to pilots. And some engineers are responsible for signage that's a little bit confusing to pilots. And I guess all I'm saying is, if we could look at those plans.
Yes, definitely. We can request from the engineer, and I'll provide that to you for your comment on it.
So this is signage directing traffic?
Right,
Aircraft traffic?
right.
Okay.
It's essentially, all we're doing is removing and replacing existing signage. Nothing on the signs are changing other than we're going to LED, but the placement of the signs,
Okay,
there's no,
okay, Don, I didn't understand that. So
Okay.
it's not new signs?
no. We're putting a couple of extra signs out there for those of you that are not sure which direction to go. We're putting 2 new ones, but that's it. Everything else is
Okay.
just remove and replace with new LED signs. They're gonna work the same that they do now. That's why there was no,
Okay, Okay, I'm okay then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the
I
wording remains the
wasn't
same.
sure about the signage
just
either,
new.
what you were talking.
Yeah, it stays the same. Everything
Yeah.
on the sign's gonna be the same. It's
All
just
right.
gonna be upgraded. That's it.
Yeah.
So,
If I may, sir, is there any signs out there, being that you're pilots, is there any signs out there that are confusing to you, being that you're pretty familiar with the runways, that you may want to bring up to the engineer?
I'm okay with the existing
I'm
signs.
kind of okay with it. I mean, I don't
I just,
I don't
if
recall
it's the
anything.
same, well, I'm okay.
Yeah.
If
mean,
if they start changing
We've
it,
been out there enough that really, I don't even look at the sign. You just go. But I think they're all right. You know,
with that
where-
said, I've never had a complaint.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, obviously
and
you
that
guys,
would be
and
something
out,
to
you know.
listen to somebody that's never flown in there before.
yeah,
I think that could bring up more
yeah.
of
So,
an opinion. But I think they're all right. You know, where they're at, if you're just replacing, and are they linked to the automated, where you can turn them on with
they
your
will
mic?
function exactly,
Exactly the
the only
same.
thing we're doing is just putting new signs.
New signs?
A couple of new signs out of the short dog legs out of 1.4 and 3.2.
yeah.
Yeah,
Those are the only
okay.
two we're adding. They're gonna be non-lit, reflective, which meets FAA standards. That's the only thing we're changing, and then we're gonna upgrade the ramp lights to LED as well. So that's all we're doing in that project. And tying in one sign that didn't have power. That'll be in there. So,
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Status on the garage, I'm sorry, Steve Alvis's hangar progress, I think we've got, it's basically finished except for paving the taxiway.
They're doing that today. They're gonna do the paving today. They're putting in 3 inches of blacktop. And they're doing the radiuses and all of that. So that should be complete by end of week. And we should have most of those people out of there. They're gonna come in and do some dirt work and, not landscaping, but they're gonna bring some topsoil in and reseed, and he's done a really, I think, a pretty stand-up job for the
Yeah.
general
Yeah. That
look
looks
of the
nice.
airport. It's nice.
I think it looks nice.
So,
John, have they had a lab out there taking densities and stuff like that, making sure they're meeting compaction and requirements like that, do you know?
the last person I saw out there doing any testing was Mr. Billingsley.
To answer the question, we did test the concrete, but I don't think they're doing any testing on the pavements. Generally, the testing is done when there's public funds involved, and this is private money, and so it's at the owner's discretion.
Now, my understanding is that Steve Alvis will use this hangar since it's his money that built it. My understanding also is that it would then revert back to the airport ownership if he were to ever leave it, relinquish it, don't use it anymore, whatever the right words are there. Is that correct?
I'm not an attorney, but yeah, that's my general understanding of that.
That's what
That's what we-
that's what the lease agreement provides. Bob.
Right. That's what I remember reading in the lease agreement. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. How is the status of the garage door at that storage building?
That door has been ordered. Gurulez worked really hard on that and getting that for us. We are, and I may be mistaken, but waiting on steel.
Yeah.
It's on order, and as soon as they receive it, they will install it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Who has that contract?
It's overhead doors.
Overhead door.
What size is that door?
It's a 14 by 16 or something like that.
Okay, plow truck. That's that new one with the broom on it. What's the status of it?
So it was made by a company called MB, and we've been back and forth on the phone trying to diagnose it. We finally decided that it was beneficial to get a PO, and Arnold helped me with that, and we got the tech out here, and we discovered that one of their wiring harnesses is damaged due to
Nice.
possibly defect on the mounting, and so we're trying to get that warranted, and they're working on that. So as soon as they get the harness, they'll either come in and put it on or send it to me so I can put it on, and that should solve the problem. So at least we got some positive motion on that. We should have the truck done before winter.
I noticed that, of course, we did the addition onto the storage building, or the, for that plow. If you get it fixed, will you feel comfortable using that, being able to drive through, John, the way?
We've put in a road that circles around the back.
Yes, sir.
And if we can bring it in, I mean, there may be days when it's snowing on icy that we may potentially not want to put it in just to not damage anything, but yeah, it'll work fine there. We shouldn't have any issues with it.
So you feel comfortable
Yes.
keeping it under cover unless there's something weird going on as
Yeah.
far as traction
Yes,
or something like
Uh-huh.
that? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, tug for the airport. We talked about possibly having a tug if we started leasing some more hangar space.
So, obviously, there is no funding for a tug, but with conversations with Arnold, we have considered potentially getting a side-by-side just to utilize it in other ways and set it up to use that as a tug. So that's what we're looking, and we're gonna try to move forward with that now in the new fiscal year. So that's,
So you're hoping your budget next fiscal year will include money for a side-by-side, is that?
yes.
We actually have some monies that we're thinking about using, some monies that were generated now through the fuel sales and stuff like that, that we're hoping to get approvals to spend that money on that. And we thought if we purchased a side-by-side, it could be utilized on the maintenance operation as well, other than just a tug that's gonna sit there 99.9% of the time, and have something that could be utilized and moved around, because, when something sits there and it's not used, it's not healthy for the unit itself, but just, and that's a thought, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna move forward with that once we get it together and have conversation with manager, and then hopefully we can move forward on that.
How large a plane will a side-by-side move?
Well,
It
even though
it'll
the weight,
probably move.
it will move, yeah, they're pretty strong, and of course, it's got good traction on the asphalt and concrete, so I would think it could move any size of jet really that comes in.
It
Wouldn't you
should
agree?
be able to move anything that we got, and,
So it'll
you know,
move Alvis's plane and,
Alvis is moving his with the golf cart, so yeah, side by
really?
side would efficiently move that, and, with the four-wheel drive, it gives us the ability to move during
Okay.
snowy conditions too, if we're pulling in and out. I know me and Rod have had problems doing that in the past, where the two-wheel drive just won't pull our plane out if there's any kind of snow on the ground.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the theory on that.
Would you feel comfortable using that side-by-side for a citation, John?
Yes.
That's answers my question.
yeah,
cool.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Okay.
I mean, there's different sizes of citation,
It's
obviously it would be
You're
on a.
not
on
going
a-
uphill
on a-
or something, yeah.
base to base. Yeah, I'm not gonna hook up to a citation 10, but,
Yeah.
I mean, a citation 2 or in that category, yeah.
And of course, he always has his spotter, his helper there too.
Yeah.
When he's gonna be backing up to these, several $1 million planes,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, see. Tens of millions.
Yeah. I haven't bought one lately, but I can imagine.
Okay, item 10. And I guess I just really brought this up for discussion. You know, when the fires happened, they essentially closed the airport, and I know you guys weren't the ones that made those decisions, but I think the committee should have been involved, and I don't think there was a valid basis for closing the airport. I think it,
And I can answer that question because I'm the one that played a big part in that decision, and not ultimately the final decision, of course, but, so it was based on the threat of the fire was threatening the village, the city. I mean, it was made during that time when the fire was right there on city limits. What was anticipated from the fire was pretty scary. They were, thinking it was gonna come into the city. And we based this on safety concerns, not just for incoming flights, but also for air traffic that was fighting the fire. And they were fighting it pretty aggressive at that time. So, smoke conditions, there was quite a few elements that led to the consideration, and the decision had to be made immediately. Okay? Had we have failed to make that decision, the possible outcome could have been catastrophic, because wind shift could have shifted and blackened out our skies, and at that time, possibly an airplane would have been wanting to land and stuff, and could have been a disaster. But, so, with that being said, I communicated with our manager, and we talked about it, discussed it. We contacted, who's the contact person there for
The state,
the state?
James Lucero.
James Lucero. And of course, we communicated with her as well, and she also, agreed that it was in the best decision. Again, I know you guys are advisory committee, and if we would have had time to reach out to you, possibly and get some input, I think we would have considered that. But based on the circumstances, we felt that was in the best interest for all.
I
You want to add
understand.
anything to that deal?
I think that really at the height of the fire suppression efforts, Mr. Arguello, how many aircraft, fixed wing or helicopter were there at the height of it?
So at the height of it, we had 14 aircraft and all supporting crews, which were not only up in the air, but we had crews running around, people on the ground, on the ramp, on taxiways. It was extremely busy. I would venture to say that rough estimate would be about 250 personnel in that general area at any one given time when they were flying.
So I think, given how busy the runways were, being that they were staggered on basically almost the whole footprint of the airport, that was part of the decision. I think where the transparency with the board would be is that we're thinking of doing this, just a phone call is, I think, is what you're wanting to hear, or were you wanting to give more of that authority to say, we say this is a good idea or not a good idea?
Well, I guess speaking for myself, there were unquestionably a period of about a week when it, I think, made sense to have the airport closed. But it wasn't until the Mexico Pilots Association got involved and started complaining that the Forest Service changed the airspace restrictions where you could legally fly in here without a special permission. And that went on much longer than was necessary. And I guess what I would say to you is, if the fire's threatening the town, yeah, I understand. But it continued for literally weeks. And there really was not those kinds, that kind of activity, that kind of concern didn't continue. But that decision wasn't revisited. That's I guess my concern, and now,
That was when the TFR was over the airport.
yeah,
Who does the FAA play a role in that?
Over the TFR that's identified in the footprint, yeah.
You had no control over that?
No.
That's what I would think. It was the FAA that did that now.
The Forest Service, so the
The Forest
federal
Service.
government did it. And
Is
the
that where it
NOTAM
came
was
from?
only issued for 14 days. And I would say that at least 10 of those days, it was absolutely necessary. The 4 days that potentially Rod's saying that we could have opened, that's arguable. I mean, depending on where you stand. There was still a lot of activity. There was still a lot of people in and out, tankers. I mean,
but John, I was up there. It wasn't where aircraft couldn't safely operate. I mean, I really, and quite honestly, the helicopters weren't using the runways.
What we used also in consideration again was the smoke that was anticipated, and we were lucky that, the wind stayed in our favor. But had it have not and blown, in that direction, there's a possibility again that we would have had maybe zero visibility or very minimal visibility also. But we did issue it for 2 weeks only, is what ours consisted of. And that was the intention of just in order to, provide safety.
So I think, that being said, we can't go back and change what took place for this incident, obviously. But moving forward, if there's an incident like this, we can communicate with the board, and we can say, we can make accommodations according to how much traffic's already there, to maybe open that for certain timeframes of the day or weeks if it's not that busy. I think we can, we've identified that gap now moving forward into the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We appreciate
And, I mean, how often is this situation going to happen? Hopefully, never again.
It was a
But
learning
it was
process
kind
for
of
everybody.
bummer to see the,
Yeah,
but, I mean, well, I was busy, so I wasn't going anywhere anyway. So, but it's,
It wasn't
Nobody
It
really-
wasn't an easy situation.
it wasn't an easy
On every
situation.
aspect of the fire, so.
nobody really
Nobody.
sits down and prepares and
No.
says this could happen.
Yeah.
Nobody was prepared for this, and I think that ultimately, everybody made the best decision at the time that they could. And like Leo said, I think we can move forward and take it as a learning experience.
Yeah,
And potentially, if it happens again, we can address it differently.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
anybody has a problem with that.
yeah,
I
no,
agree.
I agree, and it'd be nice to be able to throw in a comment, if it happens again, hopefully.
And I'd rather have this conversation than having a conversation of an accident that happened.
Yeah.
Because we didn't close it or something,
Yeah.
so.
So as a board member, I would be very comfortable if the powers to be, whoever made that decision, I don't know if that was you, Leo, to close the airport, whoever made that decision, that I'd be very comfortable if you'd contact the chairman of the airport board and include that individual in your conversations in the future. I don't think we have to worry about convening a meeting and having to go through notifications and all that nonsense. I think you would be providing wise input to them especially from a user standpoint.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that, mayor and council, well, I don't know about mayor, but I know that I wasn't informed about the airport being closed. When I did find out, I shoot out an email to our city manager. And, a lot of times as mayor and council, we hire these individuals to do a job. And they're getting paid to do a job. So we trust their judgment on how they run the city. And during emergencies like the one we had, and the ones that were potentially to have flooding and so forth, sometimes, they're working 20 hours a day. And that's fire, that's our police department, that's our utilities department. Leo himself is out there. There's many moving parts to all this. The shutting and the opening of the water gates to Story Lake. The dam at Montezuma, the diversion, should we divert, not divert? It's all timing balance. There's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of things going on that, you know, sometimes, I would say, we're overlooked. And that's fine, because we trust their judgment, and we trust what they're doing, and they'll report to us when they can. And sure enough, Leo reported to us afterwards. But, you know, they do the best that they can with the circumstances that they have, and at certain times, I mean, it's not up to us. Once the federal government takes over, or the Forest Service takes over, or the sheriff takes over, he's the law of the land, so he dictates what goes on. So a lot of times, it's not really all up to us, even though we think we're in control, and even though we think that it's ours, or the system's ours, or whatever, sometimes we don't have all that much control over things. But I do want to ask a couple of other questions related to this. Is out of those 14 aircrafts, 250 personnel that were there, how were the fuel sales? And do we make some money there, or?
Okay, so
A
that
ton of
goes
money.
into the next question, which is flowage fees and financial reports. So, I worked with Leo and the U.S. Forest Service to start with to get a LUA in place, which was a land use agreement. And the number that was agreed upon was $400 a day for the duration of the incident, not to exceed $40,000. The numbers that I have for that was 87 days, and that may change. It may be higher or lower. I'm not real sure when they shut that S number down. At $400 came out to $34,800 on the LUA. That was profit on the land use agreement. Flowage fees were imposed on any fuel that was not bought. Keyword was not bought from the airport. So these guys were burning 100 gallons an hour. They were bringing in tankers. And so every gallon that they pumped, they paid a surcharge essentially to the city of 20 cents a gallon. They pumped total, the total number, and again, these are as close as I can get. 176,000 gallon, 176 and 10,000 gallons, or 10, sounding like Biden now. 176, 10,000 gallons. And at 20 cents, that came out to 35,771.04. That's what we made profit on flowage
Their
fees.
gas.
On their gas. We were also able to accommodate helicopters during the storms. You saw them in your hangar. That was $100 a night. We were able to come up with $900 on hangar fees from them. That was just in that. Flowage, and then what we pumped off the truck during those months for current was, we pumped 12,440 gallons off the truck. That was fuel sales. Unfortunately, I can't get you the number off the self-serve. We had the smaller helicopters, their service trucks were fueling there at night. They didn't enter tail numbers, and so, I mean, that could be a total guesstimate, but I would venture to say that that also was substantial. So the answer to your question is yes. The airport made substantial amount of money on this incident.
And what about staff and overtime? And,
Staffing was the normal staffing, myself and Bill. There was some overtime during busier days, weekends. I think we put in some weekends to support the refueling, but once they got established and they were running their own trucks, we just kind of coordinated with them on Fridays to make sure they had fuel through the weekend. So there was not a lot of overtime burden on Arnold's budget.
And did our safety officer ever go up there during all this time?
Adrian did go up there a couple of times, yes.
All right. And one last question. So do we have any reimbursements that we gotta file to the state or to the federal government? No. No, none? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So what happens to that money? That
I spend it. I get to spend it.
Does it sit in a fund called airport fund, so that you can buy a four-wheeler?
Well, that's the
Those are
thought.
discussions
No.
that come up.
Yeah,
But it will be utilized specifically for the airport if
that would be nice if we could.
So
Utilize
with,
some of that
with the
money.
federal grant assurances, they say that any money, made at the airport needs to be utilized at the airport. So,
Yay.
we'll be able to do some things. As of what we're gonna do, we haven't really had the opportunity to sit down and really see these numbers actually in and discuss it, but, you know, it's gonna help.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna have to figure out exactly, when it's all said and done, what the dollar
What the
figure
total
is.
dollar amount is that,
Yeah,
that
that
we
you
have,
got.
what we gotta pay,
Yeah.
potentially for maybe stuff that we got out there and what's
Yeah.
left. And how much we wanna use and how much we wanna potentially, keep as a emergency for
Right.
stuff.
So my calculator ain't great, but does this sort of right now add up to $100,000?
I would say roughly under,
Little under?
as far as profit, but I'm,
Yeah, I'm
again,
talking
I'm not,
profit. Yeah, we don't have the numbers yet. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other conversations about Floyd fees or? Okay, financial report. Daniel, you had a financial report that you included in our packet,
Yes.
that you emailed to us, and I guess if you wanted to offer any explanation, maybe so we kind of understand what we're looking at.
So basically on the fiscal year 21 to 2022, which just ended now in July, they had a plus of 132,265 is what they made in fuel for resale this year. So that probably included some of John's with the hangar fees and the fuel, the flowage fees and stuff like that as well. I know the new fiscal year, so there's some that weren't included in there. But they're a plus of 132.
Were there any, I didn't see any expense reports at all. Did I miss that, or?
It was under.
This is what they're showing for expenses.
Oh, okay.
It didn't print right, but,
They had 180,978 in expenses.
I think this report we got showed the difference between income and expenses was 140K. And some of that's going to be the fire folks and the land use fees, maybe, is that right?
I don't think the land use fees have come in yet.
Okay, all right.
So that hasn't been closed out.
So,
But yeah, some of the fuel sales off the truck will be in that report up
Right.
to July 1st.
because fuel sales were really high on this report, 300 and,
13,000.
yeah, compared to a guesstimate, I guess, at the beginning of the year, 150K. So was a lot of that the firefighters using fuel, or can we expect that maybe the budget for next year for fuel sales should not be 150K estimate, that it should be 200, 250K? Because fuel sales are back up, or after COVID or something like that.
I mean, just the rising costs of fuel justify the price of our budget going up to
Okay.
200,000. I mean, that's a given, but
Okay,
there was a big influx in fire sales. I mean, that was evident in the numbers
Yeah.
I gave you. But there was also a increase in some military through the late summer, and that's also expected through the late summer months. I mean, through the early summer months, we get quite a bit of military traffic, so.
And they
it
fuel here.
fluctuates. They do
Okay.
fuel there, yes.
okay.
Any other comments on the financial report? It gets us to adjournment, gentlemen. Unless there's any other issues, motion to adjourn is
I
always in
move
order.
we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second. Motion carries. Thank you for attending, gentlemen. Appreciate all of us.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, Arnold.
And all you
Appreciate
guys did a
Leo,
good job.
thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
it. Daniel?
yeah, it was a tough.
John, appreciate you guys.
Yeah, something that,
Yeah,
it was a learning process,
Oh, yeah.
all that.
I saw lots of feeding things over at Waterworks. We'll do all this, and imagine you had a lot of traffic in and out. All righty.
Bye, I'll see you later.
So
Who did that?
despite what the
Who did that?
council said,
Who
you stay engaged. Something like they're thinking, trying to shut the place down. You insert the airport board's input into
Yeah,
that.
I mean,